and welcome to another episode of Some of Our Parts, the podcast where two friends talk about the movies that add up to make us who we are. I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Jim.
and this week it is my turn to pick a Thanksgiving movie.
And what did you pick for our turkey classic this week?
I picked a movie that, for whatever reason, is really near and dear to my heart. It's one that I love and make other people watch. It is the 1993 movie Son-in-Law,
Oh, okay.
starring acclaimed actor Pauly Shore, everyone's favorite.
He had a brief stint there, didn't he? For a little while, he was pretty popular, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The sort of like
So,
late 80s, early 90s, I think
hmm
was kind of his heyday for sure. And
okay.
this falls into that. I think this is probably one of his best movies, which might be saying something.
No,
But
I will say it's probably the only one I knew by title
okay.
that I knew of a Pauly Shore movie. I had not seen it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I had not seen the whole movie until we reviewed it. So
Good. Good. So I don't remember when I first watched it. I definitely did not see it in theaters because
I
I
was going to say,
was
yeah, it came out in 1993, so you were two.
three.
Oh,
I
okay.
was
So,
three, yeah. It
okay.
was, and like this is not perhaps the movie that my parents would take me to. They were taking me to see like Aladdin and like The Lion King.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think this is one that I just kind of stumbled across on TV. Like I used to watch a lot of like whatever came on Showtime. And Showtime would
Okay.
always play a lot of random movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I watched a lot of things for the first time. And I think this is how I came across this movie. And then I was like, wait, I love this. And I just kept watching it. And at some point, I bought the DVD of it at Walmart in the bin. You know, like the big bin
Oh,
where the
the
DVDs are
$5.
$5. I think like we were there. So we used to go. My grandmother lived in rural Kentucky, and we would go to like the next biggest town, which was like a tiny town, but compared to where my grandmother lived, it was the big city.
I get
Shout
you.
out, shout out to Glasgow, Kentucky. And there was a big super Walmart there. And I just remember one time we were in the back and I saw son-in-law like pressed up against the side of the bin. So I'm like digging in the bin, like I'm on like Double Dare, to find the DVD. And
Okay.
I've had it ever since. And I have made many people watch it. There was like when I was in college, like everyone I knew, I was like, have you ever watched Son-in-Law? Oh, you never seen Son-in-Law? Well,
So,
we got to watch Son-in-Law then.
so you were indoctrinating everybody to the gospel of Pauly Shore.
Exactly. I was an
Gotcha.
evangelist. I was a
O-
Pauly Shore evangelist for
Okay.
sure. Uh, this movie specifically, I can't speak for the rest of his oeuvre, but I will advocate for Son-in-Law any
Gotcha.
day, any day. It just like it makes me happy. It's a silly fish out of water kind of comedy, which we've talked about some of those
Mm-hmm.
before, but it just makes me happy. Like the character is so silly and absurd, and like the language, like me and my friends still say some of this stuff to each other. Like some of the lines he says are such like earworms to me. Like grew the dew, guzzled some brew. Like that kind of stuff, just munching on some grindage.
You do a good Pauly Shore. Now, when you all say it to each other, do you do it in the mannerism or in
Oh
okay.
yes.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yes. We're
Gotcha.
full send crawl.
Got
Or
it.
like nasty with the snaps. Always with the snaps.
Or
I did that.
girlfriend. You
Yes.
do the
Girlfriend, girlfriend. Yeah. Yes.
I'm trying to
Or
remember if people actually talked like that back in the early 90s. So I'm guessing maybe in
well,
California.
yeah, I was
So
gonna say, were you in LA?
no. The only place in California I've ever been is San Diego. And that was in the early 90s, but nobody talked like that
Yeah. They
there
weren't
anyway.
quite, they didn't have the full like surfer
No,
bro
nah, nah. So
thing. Yeah. That's the other one. The other line that always gets me is when he talks about his nickname Crawl and he's like, 'cause that's how I always got home.
I wondered from the very beginning, and we talked about it, for the first 10 minutes of the movie, I really didn't know what his name was because I couldn't figure out what they were calling him. And then I had to look it up on the thing that his name was Crawl, but and then he explained how he got the name. So
Hmm.
yeah. Hmm.
You're like the dad. You're like crotch, crap.
Yeah. I know it starts with a C, so
And he's like, my name's Crawl.
yeah.
Like he doesn't
Well,
enunciate it
it,
really.
well, nobody else really did either. It wasn't like crawl.
Yeah. He's like, my
They
name's
left off
Crawl.
the crawl.
Crawl.
At first I thought it was crawl, like CRAW. So
Mm.
like crawdad or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crawfish. But anyway,
But
so
yeah,
you
so it's a movie that centers around them going home for Thanksgiving. So I thought it was perfect time to watch this. It's been on my list. It's been like kind of I'm like, oh, when am I gonna have us watch
oh,
Son-in-Law?
so you've been counting the days down.
I have been. I've been like, when can I throw in Son-in-Law? And then I had an epiphany when we were talking about Thanksgiving movies, and I was like, oh my God, this is a Thanksgiving movie.
There you go. So
So here we are at Son-in-Law, much anticipated for me at least.
okay.
Probably not for you. Probably not
Well,
for anyone else, but I love
well,
it. And
I would hope that if after listening to our podcast that people would at least take a peek at it because I thought
for
it was
sure.
cute and I thought it was funny. So
It's
and
a fun movie to watch. It's got a bunch of
it's
good
got
people in it.
really good people in it. I mean,
People you've
Polly
seen
is
in other
not.
things.
Yeah, Polly's not the most talented guy in the cast. Just got to say.
He
So
isn't. And he's not the most like well known. I can think like there's like five other people in the cast,
oh,
maybe six that I like know like just looking at them like I
mm-hmm,
know what they're from. I don't even have to like look them up. And we'll talk about
right,
it as we go
yeah,
through. But
right. I
like,
was good. Okay, yeah.
I mean like Carla Gugino and Lane Smith and Cindy Pickett,
Hmm.
the little brother.
Mason Adams.
I mean him I didn't know off
He's
top.
more of my generation, and
Yes.
then
But
further
like
back.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen and like
Uh,
the boyfriend, all of them, I'm like, oh, these people are like all in other things that I
mm-hmm.
know. So I think that's part of the reason why I like was drawn to it initially because I knew who Carly Gugino was because she was the mom in the Spy Kids movies when I was a
Right,
kid.
right,
So I was
right.
like,
So
oh, that's the
yeah,
mom from Spy Kids, and then I was like, okay, let me tune in.
she was also in Sin City, which is
Yes, she's been in a lot. She's been in a lot of the like
she's
scary
a good,
stuff of
yeah,
late,
yeah, and she
doing all
has
the
done
Netflix.
more of the sort of espionage and sort of like some of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
She was in like Gerald's Game recently, which is another Stephen
Hmm.
King adaptation. And she was in all the like scary Netflix things of like The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, The Fall of
Oh,
the
I
House
didn't
of
know.
Usher. She's been in
Okay.
all of those. So she's been Carla Gugino's been working, but she was in like The Watchmen and Night at the Museum.
Oh, right, right. The Watchmen is the other one, and then I think for the first season, I think she was on Spin City with Michael J. Fox. I think she played his girlfriend the first season,
Oh, I
if
don't
I'm not
know.
mistaken.
I don't know
So
that I ever watched Spin City. I might have.
that was a staple for me. I was a big
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox fan. So
Yeah, so well, Son-in-Law was directed by Steve Rash, who also directed the Buddy Holly story, the one with Gary Busey. He directed Can't Buy Me Love, which is another movie on my list, because it introduced me to my first ever celebrity crush, Patrick Dempsey.
oh, okay, there you go.
As I said, I had an elderly babysitter who like we only watched like older
Oh,
movies
uh-huh.
because she would not like buy movies, so we watched things that came on TV. Or that she had taped, which is I know is not legal, but she was old. He directed two of the Bring It On sequels,
Oh, okay.
which
With
are the one with like
who?
Hayden Panettiere and like
Yeah,
the
yeah, but
the
not the one with Kirsten Dunst, the first
no,
one.
not
Okay.
that one. He directed Bring It On, All or Nothing, and Bring It On, In It to Win It.
Two classics.
Exactly. It was written by Fax Bar, Adam Small, and Sean Sheps, but their names are not links on Wikipedia, so I guess not a lot going on there.
Can I just Sean Shep sounds like a made up name to me. I'm
It's like
just
someone was trying to come up with a name and there was like a can of ginger ale near them and they
right,
were like
exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Sean Sheps. Sean
Sean Ships, yeah,
Schweppes.
yeah. Schwepper Vessens. So,
Yes. But yeah, I don't know what it is about this movie. Maybe when we talk through it, I'll come to an epiphany of what it is about this movie that
Well,
I love so much, but I think it might just be one of those ones. I think we all have the ones that we just enjoy that
oh,
just tickle us, and I think this
yeah.
one's that for me, but maybe something will come to me, will occur to me as we discuss it. So,
Okay.
shall we?
Shall we? We open with.
So, we open with like we're basically it gets Green Acres. We are getting shots of farms and fields in this small town that we later learn is Lincoln, South Dakota. I thought they called it Lincoln. I thought it was going to be Nebraska, but
You and
we
me
later learn
both.
it's South Dakota, which, as you point out, if it's Thanksgiving in South Dakota, it's not snowing.
I mean, they're not even
It
wearing like
didn't.
jackets.
Right. They're not wearing like big jackets.
Yeah, and there's no. It's everything looks green.
Yeah.
All the vegetation and foliage, as they
Yeah.
say.
That's strange. But we'll suspend. They filmed the stuff in California. So
Right. So,
we'll
well,
suspend our disbelief for them. And we see it's high school graduation at Lincoln High School, which appears to have a large graduating class of like 36.
I even wrote down in my high school, we had like 100 people graduate, which I've learned is a small graduating class compared to other high schools. And this one like made my school look like, Marshall University graduating class. It's like,
Right. I was like, this graduating class is literally like one class at my high school, like my English class.
yeah. I mean, when you saw the number of chairs, it was like what, 25 people maybe there or something like that. It was
Right.
ridiculous. Yeah. So,
I know. I was like, this is like max like 30 people.
yeah.
Uh, but Rebecca Warner is the valedictorian. She's the played by Carla Gugino, as we just discussed, who's been in a bunch of things. Like I said, for me, first things that comes to mind is she's the mom in Spy Kids, but she's been in a bunch of other things. She's been acting since she was a kid, like she was in Troop Beverly Hills
Oh, I
also.
didn't know that. Was
Yeah,
Shelley
she's
Long?
I think
Oh,
she's
okay.
one of the girls. Um, so yeah, Carla Gugino, you've maybe seen her in Spy Kids, you maybe saw her in Troop Beverly Hills, you maybe seen her, like I said, most recently in all these the spooky Netflix shows and
Okay.
Gerald's Game. So
Oh,
she's in the scary stuff now.
all right.
Uh, but she's like this like sort of mousy small town girl. She's getting ready to go to college in California. She has like, mom, dad, grandpa, brother, her boyfriend that like they went to high school together. They're going to be high school sweethearts. Da da da. His name's Travis. I love the part where she's like packing for them to leave the next day, and her dad's like, well, the boys in California are different." And she's like, "Dad, are you trying to tell me not to have sex?" And he just like won't say it. And he's like, well."
What? What? He's like,
She's
and
like, I'm fine. I'll be okay. So she has to like reassure him. Uh, meanwhile, also she then sneaks out with her boyfriend
I was going to say, and then,
for a literal roll in the hay. Although they do not go all the way. She was like, "No, I do not want to do that."
although Travis was
He
her
was he was
boyfriend,
ready to go.
I think Travis was already had his ticket ready. He
Yeah.
was, yeah, he was
Yeah.
ready to go.
He was ready to round the bases to home,
Yes,
if
yes,
if you will. And she was like, "No," which I was like, "Good for you, Rebecca."
right, yeah.
So she will be fine. And then the next day it's time to make the drive to California,
Good
which
God.
that's a long drive. And like they're going to LA. Like
And we
South
never,
Dakota to Northern California wouldn't be that bad, but South
but
Dakota to LA, that's a
what
schlep.
didn't they say 3 days? It was going to take them
He
three
said
days
like
to
two
get
or three
there.
days, something like that,
Yeah,
because the little brother has to go with them.
yeah.
And even though
Which I
grandpa was
didn't,
still at home,
which I didn't figure out. Why does the little kid have to go with him? It's
right?
like,
The grandfather and the guy that worked for them were still at home. So like
right,
certainly
yeah,
someone could have like he was like 13. He wasn't 5.
yeah.
He could have
So
he could have been
it's
fine, but they made him
whatever.
go.
Yeah. Well,
Um
comic relief.
yeah.
So
Yeah. He is for anyone who's ever had a little brother.
yes,
He's a little brother.
yeah.
This is like my brother and I are almost 17 years apart, and still like that was like
The
family
vibe.
road trips. Cause then he's like poking you and you're like, stop. And then your mom is like, both of you stop. And it's like, why are you telling me to stop? He is poking me. I'm just here.
He's the instigator. Exactly.
Exactly. I'm just trying to draw some boundaries. Talk to your son.
Hmm.
So, anyways, I also remarked their house in South Dakota. It's a very interesting little Victorian, like her room is like a tower.
I know, and she opened the window, like when they
Yeah,
were.
it's
I
like the
thought that was
tower at the
kind of
top.
cool.
It's
It
like
was
the
like
tower from
Rapunzel.
right. I'm like, this is like the house in Hocus Pocus.
Exactly. I mean, it was really cool with
She lived
the.
in like a turret. Like it was like
Uh,
truly like its own little tower. Like it's like they attached it
I know,
separately.
but didn't you like how the window opened up when
Hmm.
it wasn't like it swung over by the side. It was like from the
Yeah.
top. It
And
was
it looked
like
like it was like she had windows on like every side
right. It was like
almost.
almost like a
A little
lighthouse.
yeah. It was a
It,
cool, but as they like left, I
uh,
was like, what an interesting room.
on it. Well, I
That's
guess
always what I wanted. I always wanted like my family to buy a Victorian house that has the one like round room that
Hmm.
looked like a castle. And I was like, and then that will be my room.
Of course. Well, hey,
And I
you
will
know,
be like Rapunzel. I will be like a princess
right.
in the tower. So, anyways, they drive to California. Everybody's arguing in this car.
All
It's
the
Rebecca
time.
and the brother Zach, mom and dad. The mom's like, hey, I think we're supposed to do this way. And the dad's like, I'm driving. What are you talking about? Like, everyone is arguing just constantly. They finally arrive. They are clearly very overwhelmed. This is a lot more people than they're used to.
And do we ever learn what school she's at? We don't.
So you see on like one of the buildings when they're doing this. I peeped it just this time. It
Uh-huh.
says University of Los Angeles. So it is a made up university,
Oh, okay.
not a real one.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
We just know that she's in LA. So it's basically
Yeah,
like some hybrid of like UCLA, USC.
gotcha.
They probably couldn't, they didn't have the money to use a real university's name. So it's the University of Los Angeles, you know,
Yeah,
ULA.
ULA. Yeah. So
Um,
the home of the fighting surfers. I don't know.
right? The Fighting Valley Girls.
Yeah, there you go.
Um,
The uh, the stoners.
something like that. So they're trying to like take her stuff up. I will also pause to say the brother, who is again like a child, has a shirt that says, seduce me, please.
I wrote down I love Zach's shirt, but why did they let him wear that?
Right.
My dad would not let me out of the house if I was 13 years old wearing a shirt like that. That
Right.
that looked like that.
It's it was a mess. It was a mess. So yeah, they're overwhelmed. They're arguing. They're trying to like move all of her stuff up and like go up the stairs because it's like so crowded. It's also clearly like culture shock. Like they go upstairs. It's a
Oh,
co-ed
it-
dorm. There's a naked
mm,
guy in the hallway. And they're like, oh my God.
yeah.
Pearl clutching about it. As they move in, we meet the roommate. She's nice. After the brother is straight up digging in her drawers,
It
taking her underwear,
well, first he's like picking up Rebecca's underwear. It's like,
which
really?
is weird. Why are you touching your
Put
sister's underwear?
exactly. Yeah, a
He's
little
a
creepy.
little creep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do appreciate later when he tries to be a creep, Crawl is like, don't do that.
Yeah, don't talk about your sister like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he's being a little creep. He's digging through his sister's underwear, then the roommate's underwear. Then the roommate
Mm.
comes in and Rebecca's like, "Oh, this is your bra. Sorry." Um,
Yeah.
they her trunk is stuck. So the dad is like, "Oh, I need to get like a screwdriver to open it." And he's like, "Oh, how convenient. She lives across the hall from the RA. Isn't that great?" And he goes in the room and there's no one there until someone like unfolds upside down in front of him like he's Spider-Man because he's hanging from one of those bars
The
where you like
gravity boot things. Yeah.
yeah, you like
Yeah.
strap your feet in and you're hanging upside down. Is that like a thing people did? I don't like, are you supposed to
They
do like
did,
sit-ups
yeah.
or something or just hang upside down?
They would hang upside down, and supposedly it helps with your back, or at least I think that's what one
Oh,
of
like
the
unlock
selling
your
points.
back or whatever.
Yeah, like to stretch out and stuff. And then they had
Hmm.
one where it tilted, like it would, you could tilt.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. I've seen that where you can
You
like
know what I'm talking
you
about?
start and you like lean back and it
Lean,
like
lean back,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that was, they had all
You
kinds
look
of
like the
weirdos.
Vitruvian Man in that one.
Exactly, yeah. Um,
Um, but yeah, so Crawl, this person who we learn is named Crawl, unfolds and Pauly Shore's face pops into in front of the dad, Walter, and he's like, "Hey, I'm all right." And he's like, "Do you have a screwdriver?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't have any vodka." He's like, "No, I mean the tool." And the dad is like so put off by him. He's just like, "Oh," and like flees from the room before even waiting to see if he has a screwdriver.
I even wrote down, I don't know if when you went to school, did you live in a dorm?
Hmm.
Okay. So I didn't live in a dorm. I lived in a fraternity house, but I remember going over the other guys' dorm rooms, and usually the RAs were the weirder of the people inside the dorm, more so than the actual students. It was like
Yeah.
the RAs to me, they were always either the potheads or they were the people who, just were just weird. And then so I wanted to say, no wonder, yeah, they made him the RA. So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think,
oh,
but yeah,
okay.
they were like a little bit weird.
What's one of my fraternity brothers who didn't live in the house, he lived in the dorm, stayed in the dorm, and we used to go over to his, dorm room to study and stuff. But I remember like, oh, if you wanted pot or something, it was the RA that was the dealer, out of the building. So it was like, because somebody said something about, oh, let's go get some weed, and he go, oh, my RA's he's got some good stuff. So
The RAs at
excuse me.
my school felt a little more, they were weird, but in a more nerdy way.
Were they? Oh, okay, a
Mhm.
little more responsible, maybe.
Yeah. Also, the best part when the dad leaves Carl's room, Carl's like, "Don't leave me hanging."
That was funny. I wrote that.
So, anyways, the dad is like shell shocked a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to the room and he's like, "Oh, I don't know about this." And then the roommate comes back and she's like, "Oh, this is my girlfriend," which they understand as like a friend who's a girl. But then they kiss. And the, the, the mom and dad are like scandalized. Rebecca's a little bit like, "Oh, dang." The little brother is enthralled. He's loving it.
Zach wants the camera.
Yeah,
He said, Dad, where's your camera? He
little
wants a
creep.
picture of that. Yeah, exactly.
So funny. But the family leaves.
Yeah, I even wrote down, uh-oh, lesbian for a roommate.
It was great. One of my roommates senior year was lesbian. It was great. My other roommate and I, she was like nervous to go on a first date, and so we went with her. It was
Okay.
all four of us just sitting at a table.
Nice.
I'm sure the date was like, "Why are these other two women here?"
Yeah, you probably thought, oh God, they're going to kill me, aren't they? They're going to kill me and rob me.
We met in a public place. It was funny though,
It
but
doesn't matter.
that's
Y'all
true.
still, y'all still could have killed him and robbed him.
Could have smuggled her away.
Exactly.
Anyways, so Rebecca's like, "Oh crap, now I'm here by myself." But R.A. Crawl returns. He's walking around in underwear and a robe with a video camera, like creeping on girls.
Hmm. And doing running commentary.
Yes, he is talking the whole time. Like when he gets to Rebecca, he's like, "You got charisma." And she says, "What?" And he said, "It's the unique quality of leadership that draws people to you." I can't remember exactly what he said, but I remember he started with this the
Right.
unique
Yeah.
quality of leadership. But he has a tool and he pops her trunk open. So he is helpful, if weird.
True.
And he asked where she's from. She's like, "I'm from South Dakota." And he says, "Oh, so you're inbred." Which is funny because that is a joke that has been made, like my family would make, because again, rural Kentucky. And my and you know, West Virginia.
Exactly.
Um,
So, yeah.
my mom's cousin, who's like, she's almost my grandmother's age because of just the spread of my grandmother's siblings, but she would be like, "Oh, we're inbred," and my mom would be like, "Don't tell people that. We're not. Do not say that to people." But
I know.
I'm sure you've heard it before. Uh, but then he gets distracted because there's some other girl that he's gonna go be like, "Oh, you got
Of charisma.
charisma."
I know it's like you think he's creeping on Rebecca, and actually he's like that with everybody really.
Equal
He's like,
opportunity.
exactly, yeah. Rebecca holds no special place for him at this point.
No,
So,
not yet. But she is struggling to adjust.
oh well, it's tough.
And I think, it's like college, and she chose to go to college in somewhere that is completely different from you and I. We didn't go far from home to
No,
go to college. So, like,
yeah, there was
although
no
my college
culture
was
shock.
still my college was a little bit of a culture shock,
Uh,
but
well, yeah, I mean,
I went to a college full of like rich, like white Catholic people from New Jersey and Long Island, which is not the environment I grew up in.
I get you.
So I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, for
My colleague,
example,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, 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 go ahead.
I was gonna say, so my freshman year of college, Barack Obama was elected, and not a lot of excitement on my campus for that.
Really? Really?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I thought that like
Right. No,
we were not all
we
on the
were
same
not.
page.
Oh,
No. I mean, I met the people who were, thankfully. Me and my
yeah,
roommate were.
but you
But I
didn't get
thought,
that vibe from the entire, or not the entire, but the majority of the
oh no.
student body.
My roommate wrote one thing about Barack Obama on our door, and it was stolen, and then our door was covered in McCain Palin stickers.
Ooh,
So the vibe was not great. So
that
like things
does.
like that, I was like, oh.
Oh,
Or like
okay.
people that lived in New York would always talk about their summer houses, and I was like, oh, there's another house. You go to another house, not the one that you live in. You have another one,
Yeah, another one that you don't rent or that you don't pay for by the week.
right? I'm like, oh,
You have money.
aha, aha. This is not my experience. But yeah.
My biggest thing was in because my university was in my hometown and we knew where it was, but it was not people from different uh, money or whatever, but it was just people from different areas of the state and from outside of the state. Just
Hmm.
because you didn't see a lot of diversity, in our community, but you did at Marshall. So
Yeah.
that was the only thing I would say that was culture shock. But
Yeah. That was, I think, too. Like, I didn't know anybody from like New York, really, right?
yeah,
And then I knew a
so.
bunch of them. I was like, everybody sounds like they're on like The Sopranos. My roommate was from Long Island. My roommate of a couple of years would be like chocolate dog.
Yeah,
My
ours
favorite.
was like everybody sounded like they were, or the people from New York and New Jersey sounded like they were from The Godfather. It was like,
Yes.
yeah, so
Or like the nanny,
yeah,
Mr. Sheffield.
yeah,
Anyways, but Rebecca's struggling, which like we said, it's kind of normal, but also like she's made a big change, and it's clearly she's like hasn't really made any friends. Like
yeah,
she's not really engaged, which I will say, listeners, if any of you are like starting college, just like join a club, join a fraternity or sorority, like sign up for something, because that's how you make friends.
exactly, yeah.
Just do something. You got to just be around people, and then eventually some of them will become your friends.
Or as Crawl says, mingle,
Yeah, you got to mingle.
mingle. I don't do it as well, so I think I have that too much West Virginia, not enough
Maybe,
California.
maybe.
So,
And also, I've probably watched this movie like 100 times. Anyways, fast forward to Halloween. We see Crawl is walking
oh
around as Carmen
God.
Miranda. He's got the
And
full thing of fruit on his head.
and not a bad Carmen
Not a bad
Miranda.
Carmen Miranda. He's committed, which I
Oh,
appreciate
oh,
in a costume. He's got
even
the
down to the eye makeup.
eye makeup. He's got the fancy bra and like a fancy like belt, and again the fruit on the head, which
The
is
little shrug jacket thingy,
yes,
so
yes. He's in a skirt. He's wearing heels. Like
mm, mm-hmm.
he's
He's
fully
full on.
fully committed, which I appreciate. Also, during this moment, we get a brief cameo from another Pauly Shore movie. We get Brendan Fraser in character from Encino Man. So if you've seen Encino Man, which I have not, but he's like a caveman. So he's a caveman. He like eats a half of fake frog. He just takes a bite out of it. Um, Rebecca's just trying to do laundry on Halloween, which again is like
Oh,
kind of a bummer. And then she comes back to her room, and her roommate has
oh,
a bunch of people in there, and someone is sitting on her desk, sitting on this lovely little wooden horse that her grandfather had whittled for her. And she's just like, ugh, like she's just like, come on. Like that's like the vibe. She's just like, guys, like another thing, basically.
right,
Like I already
right.
feel like crap here, and now you broke my thing, and like, come on. And her roommate apologizes, but she's like, I just gotta go. Like that's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back for her. And she goes out to the payphones in the hallway and is gonna call to tell her parents to like come get her because she's
Yeah.
done. Crawl comes upon her at this moment and he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And she tells him, she's like, I'm ready to leave. And he's like, you haven't even he's basically, you haven't really given it a chance. You
Hmm.
have to try to like do something, get engaged, mingle,
Mingle.
get out, like go off campus. And he uses himself as an example, right? He shows her a picture. This is a great picture. It's a younger Pauly Shore, but he has, if you know Pauly Shore, like in these movies, he has like long curly hair, not unlike my own. And in the picture, he has like much shorter hair. He's wearing glasses. It's clearly like a senior picture, right? He's got like his
Yeah.
the suit on. Um, and he's like, listen, I was like very nerdy. I tossed the specs, grew the dew, guzzled some brew. Grew the dew, guzzled some brew. Again, that's like an earworm in
Oh, okay. Is that
that lives
okay?
on repeat in my brain. Sometimes I'm just like walking around my house and I grew the dew, guzzled some brew. He's like, it's college, like you're supposed to like have fun and like get to know. He's been in college and he knows because he's been there for 6 years.
I was going to say, and he still hasn't
He
graduated.
still's not graduated because he seems to change his major like every. He's like, I've done like all the majors,
Yeah.
basically. Um, but he's like, you have to really try because you haven't. So like you haven't
Right.
even like been off campus, like you don't even know the area. So let me like take you around, give it a try. So she's like, okay. So first they start with a new wardrobe. So because she was dressing very sort of like,
Oh, she still had her Midwestern like
yeah, it
sweater and
was
her,
very like a Little House on the Prairie,
yeah,
but the 90s version of that. So she was very
right.
like, I don't know, like the Duggars.
Yeah.
Very
I
like demure.
very, I was gonna say, yeah, she's very kind of buttoned up and
Hmm.
sort of
Literally, like she would be wearing a cardigan buttoned top to
right.
bottom.
Yeah. So,
So he gets her in some like SoCal early 90s where they call it Weasel wear because this is like this character that Pauly Shore did. Like this Crawl like is a version of his character which he called the Weasel that he started like when he kind of started doing stand up. His parents co-founded the Comedy Store, which is like a huge comedy club in LA that like lots of comedians have
oh
started
gosh,
at or performed
yeah.
at. Like it's a very famous venue. So he kind of grew up there. So he debuted a character called the Weasel, which is like very much this. The way he
Okay.
is in a lot of these movies. It's like this sort of like 90s surfer, Southern California, like bro, that kind of vibe. So anyways, they call the outfits Weasel wear. Um,
Although
then
some
he
of it sort of reminded me of 70s, gave me the 70s vibe, but
Yeah.
maybe,
I think
uh,
that's always like the thing, right? Like everybody's
maybe, I
like 20
guess.
years. Like
Yeah.
sometimes in the 90s, like there are people who were wearing 70s, and like now it's the 2020s and people wearing early 2000s outfits again. And
Yeah.
like, so, but I actually really love that's one of the things I was watching when I was rewatching it this time. I was like, I really like, I like a lot of her outfits. Like they're kind of crazy, but like in
Oh,
a very fun.
the stuff, yeah, the stuff that he
Crawl's
gets her
outfits
into.
are a little much at
It,
times,
it, well,
especially when he gets to the
I
farm.
was going to say when we get, yeah, when we,
I'm like, did he cut up those cowboy boots
I
into
know.
clogs? But anyways, her outfits, I'm like, these are fun. Some of these
Yeah,
I would wear.
yeah,
I would not wear a sheer top to see my parents, but to each their own.
right.
We'll touch on that in shortly. But she sees she's got this like long brown hair, and she sees a woman walk by with like short blonde hair, and she's like, "Oh, I want that." So then she goes, she gets chops her hair off. She's a very lovely, like voluminous 90s bob, and she has it
Hmm.
dyed blonde. She has it bleached. It's a little brassy, it's a little orange, but it's okay. Um, and then they're like rollerblading, which is so like 90s Southern California,
Right.
rollerblading through the park. And then she decides she wants a tattoo. And we get another cameo
Oh,
here.
yeah. I love this because I didn't expect that.
Yes, from Flea, the bassist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who, if you know who he is heavily tattooed.
Very much so. And I guess he's the tattoo artist, right? I get
Yes.
in the shop.
And it is the lines in this, it's a very quick scene, but it's very funny because she's like, what I want is something feminine. And Flea is like, he's standing right next to me, referring to Crawl. And Crawl's like, see what happens when you get tattoos, Rebecca? The ink is seeping into his brain. What are you, you freak? And he's like, Flea's like, yeah, he's probably right. It's so silly. But also because Flea has this like sort of vacant, crazy look in his eyes the
He
whole
well,
time. Like he looks
if
like he doesn't blink.
and Fleas looks like that whenever you see him, whenever
Yeah.
he does stuff,
He does have also sort of like very piercing, like light blue eyes.
Oh, he
So like
does, yeah. So
he does look kind of crazy.
I
Um,
think Flea might have been maybe had taken something to get him through the scene maybe at this point. So
little buzzed, little buzzed. But yeah, then like Rebecca and Carl are like BFFs. They're also like a little bit flirty always. Like when they're at the beach and he's like reaching over her for a beer and then he like drops it on her and
oh
like picks
yeah.
it back up and I'm like, okay. But also it seems like that's just his vibe because then immediately after that he's
Oh,
scoping out girls with his
binoculars.
binoculars, going, that's the kind of girl I'm gonna marry.
And yeah, some girl in a skimpy bikini,
Yeah. And then they go watch mud wrestling.
and just not a mud wrestling fan. Went to go see Jello wrestling,
Hmm.
so which was interesting. So
I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm sure. That reminds me of old school.
it reminds me of Stripes.
I haven't seen Stripes yet. You
Oh,
haven't picked Stripes for us to watch.
you will.
I
It's
was
on
gonna
the
say.
list. So
Um,
another John Candy classic.
of
So
course. Well, at mud wrestling, Rebecca puts Crawl in as a challenger, as the under the name the resident advisor. And
yes,
he ends up fighting this giant woman who just like lifts him up over her head and throws him on the ground.
the battling bunny
Oh, yes. She's,
Thumper.
yeah,
Yeah,
she thumped the hell out of him.
but I think he thought it was going to be the two women that were in there wrestling
Yes, because he
previously.
was very excited
Oh yeah,
for a
because
moment, and he
scantily
definitely thought it was
clad.
going to be one of these like big boob bikini ladies, and it
Right.
was not.
Yeah, because she comes up from behind him, and then he doesn't know who it is at first. So
And she picks him up like he weighs nothing
she also picks him up in a very indelicate manner.
by the crotch.
Yeah, so sort of like the same way that
The guy
Steve
in Planes,
Martin.
Trains, and Automobiles
Yeah,
picked up Steve
got
Martin.
exact. Hmm. Both of our
Yeah.
Thanksgiving movies had the same sort of maneuver. How about that?
Interesting.
Hmm. Coincidence? I think not.
Mm-mm. And well, clearly a few weeks has passed. A few weeks have passed because Rebecca is packing to go home for Thanksgiving break. Time flies when you're having fun. She has a call in the hallway, and this is the sign that things have changed because she picks it up, and it's her boyfriend Travis on the other end, and she's like, "Who is this?" And he's like, "It's Rebecca, it's Travis." And she's like, "Oh, hey, what's
Yeah.
up?" And meanwhile,
Yeah.
he's like trying to talk to her, and it's like very important. She's like talking to other people in the hallway, and like
Is she drinking a beer, by the way, or is it a Coke?
I
Because I
think it's a
couldn't.
Coke. I
Is it a
think it's a
Coke? Because I
Coke.
couldn't tell because the can was kind of covered up, and I thought, like, oh, maybe that was, how far she's progressed or whatever. Now she's like having a beer, and whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not though.
Um, but also you can hear from Travis that he's really hinting at like, oh, we've been together for so long and
I've really missed
I've really
you.
missed you and like he's
Oh.
hinting at something and she's like,
Mm,
"Oh, I don't love this."
mm.
It's time to hang up. She's like, "Oh, sorry," because she's like kind of talking a little bit to Crawl, talking a little. Oh, because he has leopard print pajamas on, and he keeps going, "Steven Tyler pajamas, Steven Tyler pajamas," uh, and she's like,
And he,
"Okay, well, I'll see you when I get home tomorrow." And he's like, "I love you," and she said, "Yeah, me too. Bye."
mm, I wrote down. I wrote down. I remember conversations like that. It's like,
Well,
yeah.
um,
I really miss you too. Maybe, yeah,
yeah,
not so much.
for sure.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then Crawl is supposed to go see his mom in Las Vegas. He grew up in Las Vegas with a mom who's like a casino worker
She was
lady.
a dealer, wasn't she?
I
Like
think he said like a
a
dealer.
blackjack dealer or something? Yeah,
Yeah.
not a drug dealer, but a
Yeah. So he
yeah,
grew up around Caesar's Palace. Um, his mom is on her like third marriage or fourth marriage or
something
something,
like
he
that.
said.
Yeah.
And the current stepdad sells like medical devices. I
Yeah.
like when they're on the beach and he's like, you might see some of his work wash up here. Uh,
I have to admit, some of the lines are funny in the way he delivers them. So,
I think the way that like there's a piece that is endearing because he says everything like it's very sort of like sweetly and innocently, like he's always like kind of shrugging, like you
yeah,
might see
like,
some of his stuff
yeah,
wash up here.
yeah, just,
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe that's the way things happen around here.
Yeah.
So,
Or when he keeps asking the grandpa, he's like, "Can I please whittle wood with you?" Uh, anyways, he's gonna stay in the dorm by himself and just eat a hungry man meal.
oh, yeah.
And Rebecca's also he's wearing a pilgrim hat with his Steven Tyler pajamas. But Rebecca's like, "You can't stay here by yourself." So
It
she
is
brings him home.
Thanksgiving,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. So,
You can't be on campus by yourself. So she's like, "You're coming home with me." Clearly she has told her family she's bringing a friend.
oh, yeah.
Um, because they're waiting for her there. Again, she's wearing a like a fishnet shirt with a purple bra under it.
It's like a Bruno shirt.
Yes. Bruno Tonioli, for those who don't know, the judge on Dancing with the Stars, always he loves a sheer shirt,
Mhm.
and so does Rebecca. Not the choice I would make to see my family for the first time in a while, but to each their own. I
I
love her
guess.
purple tights, and I do really like her coat though.
Oh,
The
yeah.
black coat with the like leopard trim. I do
Hmm.
love that. I would wear it.
Yeah.
Um, and she's like, "Oh, it's funny." She's clearly very different, right? She's the hair is different, the look is different, but she's like, "Hey, Connie, hey, Walter." Instead of she
Oh,
doesn't call her parents mom and dad, she calls them Connie and Walter. Her brother has a sign that's supposed to say "Welcome home, Rebecca," but he's flipped it over and it says "Go home, Rebecca." And she's like, "Hey, bro, thanks, love the sign." And she's like, "Hi, Travis." And then she's like, "Oh, my friend's just right behind me. He'll be here in a second." And they're all like, "He?"
yeah. Uh-huh.
And
And it's
then Crawl emerges from the plane, and they're all like, "What the hell?"
because he's full on crawl.
Yes. He's got a semi sheer shirt on, like a spandex shirt, this like crazy jacket. He's got the curly hair with like a bandana tied around, and like I think he's wearing like the striped sort of like flared pants.
Yeah, it was good. That's what reminded me of the '70s. It was almost like bell
Yeah.
bottoms, but with the stripe,
Mm-hmm.
not the
Mm-hmm.
pattern, but the was it black and white? The black
Yeah, or
and
it's
white,
like black and like red or like
red
maroon,
or
I
something
think.
like that. But yeah, something.
And he
Yeah.
always wears his like green Doc Martens, which I really like those too.
Oh, okay, okay, all right.
I have
So,
red Doc Martens.
ooh, okay, all right. Never owned a
Um,
pair of Doc Martens, but just saying. So,
I think they're cool. So, but that's also a very like 90s look
yeah.
too. The sort of grunge thing. Um, the family is surprised and not pleasantly so.
The look on their faces is pretty good, you got to admit. So, I mean, they
It
do a
is
good job
good.
of registering what the hell is this?
Uh, and also Dad remembers him. And Dad's like, I
Oh,
didn't. Oh,
right.
oh, and this is when he goes up to him and he's like, "Hey, sir, I popped your daughter's trunk." And he's like, "What?
Yeah, like, what are you
What
talking
does that
about?
mean?" He means just literally he popped the trunk open, but
But and
it sounds like it means something
also
else.
Crawl sort of says it in a way that, maybe is, a little, I won't say it's dirty, but it's a little suggestive, "Oh, by the way, Dad, I
I
popped your
popped your
daughter's
daughter's trunk.
trunk." You
He's kind of
know.
like, "You'll be pleased to know."
Yeah, exactly. After you left, I was able to
Hmm.
take care of that little mishap.
Yeah. So they all ride back to the family farm. There's not room for Crawl in the truck. So he is standing in the bed of this pickup truck singing the Green Acres theme song the whole way. He's jazzed to be
Oh,
there.
yeah. He loves this.
Green Acres is a place to be. This is the only way I know the Green Acres theme song, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I watched Green Acres, so yeah.
I did not. I've seen clips of it. I've seen like Zsa
It
Zsa
was
Gabor was on it.
Ava.
Ava Gabor. Okay.
Ava, yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen
The
her.
smart
Yes.
one.
Okay.
She really was. Yeah, she was the smart one. So, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was good. So,
They arrive to the farm and Crawl's very excited. He's got his camcorder again. He's like running all around the chickens and he's about to go into like the pen with the bulls. And the guy that works on the farm, Theo, is like, yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And he's like, oh man, I've never been on a farm. And then he's sort of exploring around. He goes up, the grandfather, Becca calls him Pappy. He is on the porch whittling wood because that's what he does. And he's Crawl asks him if he's Bartles or James, because everybody back at school really does love his wine coolers.
you're big on the college scene, man. I love that. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Becca is talking with Travis in the barn so they can have some like one-on-one time. He immediately steps in cow shit,
Hmm.
which should have been assigned to him of how things would go.
Exactly.
Also,
I
it
think
was
it
a
was a
very big
metaphor.
pile. Yeah,
It was. Yeah. So,
it was a
yeah,
very big pile, so perhaps he should have seen it, but whatever.
you would think.
He had other
He had
things on
other
his
things on him.
mind.
Great minds think alike. We were just going to say the same thing.
So he he's like jealous that Crawl is there. Becca's like,
Oh,
"Don't worry about it, we're just friends."
yeah. He was going to
And
be all
then
alone,
yeah, he was
and
gonna be alone. I didn't want it to happen. He's like, "Okay." And then immediately he's like, "Well, Becca, we've been together for a long time. And even though you're at school, blah 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 blah." And she can see where this is going. He's about to start kneeling and she's like, "Oh." And so she is like, "Oh," and sort of like faints a little bit. She doesn't like faint, but she sort of like has to
yeah.
sit down, like she's become lightheaded, get her smelling salts. She's like, "Oh Lord."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, are you okay?" She's like, "Oh, I think I'm just so tired and of all the traveling and all the excitement of today." And he's like, "Okay, why don't you go take a nap and I'll see you tonight at the country club." She's like, "Okay, yeah, yeah." And as she walks away, he says, "Don't worry about your hair. It'll grow back."
Oh, I know.
To
And
which
she
I was
didn't
like,
even turn around. She was just like, like,
her hair
whatever.
looks cute.
I know.
Um, Meanwhile, in the house, Crawl is going to share a room with Zach, the little brother, who is not into this. He's like, "I don't want that guy, that freak staying with me." And they're like, "Well, he's going to." So,
Right.
and it's
Suck
funny,
it
Crawl
up.
comes in and he's like, "Oh, I hope I don't like inconvenience anybody." And the brother's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
But the rest of them are like, "No."
Yeah.
He goes to the kitchen. This is when we first hear munching on some grindage.
Which uh, I had no idea what he was talking about until, when he
They
started coming out
kept
with
saying
food.
it.
Yeah, exactly. I figured it out. Oh, okay. So he's talking about eating. Okay.
Yeah.
Munchies I knew, but munching on some grindage, I didn't know what that meant. So
Yeah.
I
Not a
learned
phrase I'd
something
heard
new.
before this.
Okay.
Um, but then when he goes up into the room with Zach, Zach is like, "The rule of this room is don't touch my stuff." Um, he's not especially welcoming to Crawl. Although
Right.
then he's putzing around on his computer, which is like the most 90s computer ever. So DOS, all
Beep,
the DOS
beep,
happening.
beep. Yeah, it was like,
Um,
Error.
yes. And Carl's like, well, can I help you? But I'd have to touch your computer. And then Zach relents. Carl fixes it, and then they're kind of buds from then on because they both like computers and like video games and Playboys.
Yeah. And I liked how Cross sort of described what he did to his computer, which I had no idea. I don't even know
Yeah.
if it really meant anything, but well, how'd you do that? Oh, you jazzed up your, whatever,
Yeah.
and
You
did,
just jazzed up your router and had to and
yeah,
override or something.
yeah,
So Becca comes in because she needs Crawl's counsel.
yes.
She makes Zach leave. And Crawl, he's kind of a doofus, but he's like, I think you should probably just tell Travis the truth that you aren't ready to get married. And Rebecca's like, okay, I'll do that. Spoiler alert, doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm like, okay, see, Crawl is not like all bad. He's like,
Right.
I think probably the best option is to just tell him the truth, which is,
He's changed her look and got her to, open up a little bit, and now I think he's given her good advice,
mhm,
about how to deal with the situation,
yeah,
but
he's trying to help her break out of her
yeah,
shell, including like, hey, you don't have to like do this thing that was expected of you. And if it's not what you want to do, then you should just like say that,
right.
which is right. And now he needs some help from her. He's like, my threads are not working here. Like, I need some new
Yeah.
gear. I need some rustic wear. So, she takes him into town. He calls a bunch of people outside the store. He's like, oh, inbreeders.
In his defense, they kind of look
They did look a little, they were giving deliverance a little bit.
little vibe.
Little hills have eyes.
Yes, yeah, that was especially the bald headed guy.
Yeah, they did look a little bit. So they're shopping. He's got a ton of like
Oh
cowboy
my
hats and
God.
cowboy boots and all this stuff. He's trying on stuff. We meet Tracy again, who we saw her at the graduation. Tracy is the one played by Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who, if you were an she's Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell, I think is
Oh,
like the biggest
yeah,
thing. She
right.
was on 90210 also, and then she was later on like White Collar. She was the one dude's wife, the like FBI agent's wife. Those are the things I mostly know of her. But I think Kelly Kapowski is like,
Yeah, Saved by the Bell.
especially at this point, like this came out in 1993, right? Like when Saved by the Bell was ending. So like at this point to the world, she was Kelly. To me, she was always Kelly Kapowski. But
Right.
so Tiffany Amber Thiessen, she works at the bar. I guess she was one of those people who's also going to leave town, but she's just saving up. So she works at the
Oh,
bar.
right. Yeah, because she said, I thought you were going to
New
New
York.
York? Yeah, New York.
She
Yeah.
said she's got to save up some money. So she's got big dreams outside of their small town too. Crawl comes out wearing he's wearing chaps. He calls them cheek chillers. And we see why. Because when he turns around, he's just bare ass.
Fast.
It's also funny because he goes, you likes? And Rebecca says, I hates.
However, Tracy looks intrigued.
She's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just so funny. He just turns around and it's just bare ass.
I know.
Um, anyways, that night they all go to dinner at the country club, the whole family and Travis. The dad cannot remember Crawl's name. He calls him Crap. And he says, how did you get this nickname? And he says, oh, I got it freshman year because that's how I always got home. Crawling.
Probably.
Zach spills the beans that Becca has a tattoo, which everyone's not happy to hear.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
before everyone can get very outraged, Travis stands up and starts giving a speech. Ting, ting,
Ding
ting, ting,
ding
ting,
ding
ting,
ding
ting,
ding ding.
ting, ting.
Yeah, it does the yeah.
The
Also,
ringing on the glass.
didn't it seemed a little odd to me that this little small town has a country club?
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
in my like grandmom's town, they had like a clubhouse that was like
right,
next to the
right,
church,
right.
but it
But
was
it
not a
wasn't a
country club because
country
a
club
country club suggests that they have a golf course.
or a swimming pool or tennis
Right.
courts or something. Yeah, but I see. I thought it would have been like a yeah, like either that or a fancy restaurant, for them, like
Right.
it was not an all you can eat restaurant, it's like
Right. I would think they would call it like a lodge or like a clubhouse or
right,
something like
right,
that.
right,
That's like
or
affiliated with like
yeah,
the like Elks or you know what I
or the
mean? Like
Lions Club, or
right,
yeah,
right.
or the
Yeah.
the
Like I
or
said,
the
like at
or
in
the
my grandma's small
Freemasons.
town, it was the clubhouse that was like affiliated with the church.
Yeah,
And it was like a
in
big building where we had
in in
events.
in my well, in my hometown, it was in my sisterhood. Now it was the Women's Club of Huntington, and that was where
Mm.
you had a place like that where they served food and stuff, so.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. So that was weird. I do always think that. But anyways, everyone's dressed kind of fancy.
yeah,
And
they have sport
he,
coats.
yeah, except Crawl. He looks crazy. Before I get into what happens, he's wearing like short overalls. He has somehow cut the cowboy boots into clogs. So he basically cut off like the shaft and the heel of the boot.
Right,
So there are
it's just
clogs with a little heel.
with a little heel.
He's wearing knee socks. Also, he's wearing like spandex, like bike shorts under the short overalls, and he's still wearing this sort of like lime green tight shirt under that, and a cowboy hat.
Do you get the feeling that this might have been Polly's own wardrobe?
Who even knows, man? So, anyways, um, Travis is up. He's done the little glass clinking, ting, 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 ting. Attention, please. And he launches into his spiel to ask Rebecca to marry him in front of everyone.
Mm,
What appears to be the whole town. Given the
pretty
size of the
much.
high school class, this is probably the whole
Yeah,
town.
probably. Yeah.
And Rebecca's like, crawl, do something. She's like stepping on his foot. And he
Oh,
stands up and he's like, well, she can't because I already asked her to marry me and she said yes. And Travis like runs out
oh,
because that's
yeah.
embarrassing. And Rebecca's like, oh no, Travis. And she runs out after him and Carl goes after her. He punches. She's trying to talk to him. When Carl gets out there, he punches Carl in the face and crawls on the ground like, "Why did you do that?"
He's such a whiny little like. Although in his defense, he did bust his nose pretty good.
He
So,
did. He did.
but even still, he was like, "Why did you do
That part makes the voice he says it. It makes me
that?"
laugh so
Well,
much.
it's
That
like a
little,
little kid,
little
It's like
whining voice.
yeah. So
Um. Anyways, Travis is like very embarrassed and upset, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, Travis. Like I wouldn't." And then as they ride back, Carl's like, I thought you were gonna tell the truth." And Rebecca's like,
yeah,
I didn't really have a chance to."
but she makes it sound like it's his fault. I mean, and
Right. She's like,
she's the
why
one,
would you do that? And he's
right?
like,
Uh, That was the first thing that came to my
that's all I could
mind.
think of. You like asked me to swoop in. Like,
Right? Yeah.
you were supposed to talk to him and you didn't. Like, she should have, when they got to the country club, pulled him aside immediately to tell him.
Exactly. Listen, before
But
this
she
goes
didn't.
any further,
Right. But she didn't do that. So then there they were.
right?
Um, when they get back, once again, Pappy's on the front porch whittling wood, and
Oh my
Carl's
God.
like, "Can
And
I
see,
whittle wood
why
with
didn't
you?"
Pappy go to the restaurant? Did,
Was he there?
well, wait a minute. What? He was there, wasn't
He
he?
was
He
there.
he was there.
He just gets home and immediately is like on the
I,
porch.
I, I guess so.
He
Yeah.
skedaddled out of that truck because Rebecca and Carl were in the bed of the truck. Unsafe, friends, unsafe.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, come on.
he just
You
fully
have family in
ignores.
Kentucky. We know you know how we do in pickup trucks. Come on.
I probably did ride in the bed of a truck at some point there.
Yes.
But Pappy fully ignores Carl every time he speaks to him.
Yeah. Yeah, he acts like he's not even there.
Yeah.
Or he just goes, "Oh crap." Like
He just sits there. Carl just sits there with him regardless of what he wants. And there's kind of two conversations happening at once. The mom is asking Rebecca, like, what is going on? And Rebecca's like, Connie, leave me alone. And she's like, stop calling me Connie.
yeah, I'm
And
your
the
mother.
dad asks Carl, like, how are you going to support my daughter? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what do you do? And the dad's like, I run this farm. And he's like, okay, well, I'll do that. And the dad's like, you think you can run a farm? And he's like, yeah, it's like I'll do a 9 to 5. And he's like, oh, Theo, did you hear? He said he's going to do a 9 to 5. So he's like, okay, tomorrow you can get started learning on how to run the farm. And Carl's like, okay, cool. Theo's going to show him the ropes. He wakes him up at 5 o'clock,
Oh,
right
dark
around
30. Yeah.
cock-a-doodle doo, right when the rooster is crowing. And first things first, Theo pushes him into a giant pile of poop.
Hmm.
So that's always a nice way to wake up. Also, Carl's wearing basically a sweatsuit with the short overalls on top of it.
Top of it. Yeah.
Still the clogs
And his cowboy
and
hat.
his cowboy hat. He does have his hair pulled back into a
Yes.
ponytail. So he means business. But yeah, Theo's just messing with him. He like gives him this giant bag of feed and knocks him over. He sends a big old pig after him. Carl's not doing well. He tries to drive a tractor. Theo does not tell him kind of how to do it correctly. So he's supposed to reverse. He drives forward and knocks down a fence. He tries to milk a cow, which this I think is on Crawl. You've never seen anyone on TV milk a cow. He sits like behind the cow and the cow pees on his head. Also, the cow could
Right.
kick you.
Exactly.
You're not supposed to be behind the
Yeah.
legs.
No. Yeah. Exactly. So,
This is just,
yeah.
I thought, common sense, but apparently not.
Well, LA, I could see, he's not sure where that exactly how that works. So, but
Yeah.
maybe he's never seen it
But I
in.
feel like if you see people on TV or like in a picture milking a cow, they're on the side of it.
They're always on the side of it. You never
But
stand behind
right, why would you get
yeah,
behind a cow? That's where the butt is and the
yeah,
legs.
right.
Anyways, he's not doing well, but Crawl is undeterred. He
His
wants
spirit is not broken.
indeed, he is an optimist. He comes in for lunch and they're like laughing at him, and he's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna have some lunch and go back out there." The family descends into argument, as they are wont to do, and he's like, "Hey, clearly I am the problem, so I'm just gonna go." But he's sort of like slowly leaving and keeps like
Yeah.
looking over his shoulder. He's waiting for them to be like, "No, don't go." But they're all
Yeah.
just like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Until finally Rebecca's like, well, I'm gonna go too. And they're like, well, don't do that. The dad is like, what, crotch? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
crawl.
Crap.
Crotch is my favorite.
Yeah, that is good.
Um, but he goes back to work. He Crawl's like, well, I have more work to do. Because he broke his fence. He's like, you've cost me a lot of money today. And he's like, well, I'm gonna work it off. I'm gonna
Yeah.
like work it to pay you back. And he's like, you don't have a job. And he's like, yeah, I do. I'm a farmer. So he's going to go back to work, and actually Zach is going to go help him. And you get the impression that Zach does not often volunteer to do work on the
Well,
farm
I
because the
wrote down
dad looks
like
surprised.
yeah, I wrote down like when they came to get when Theo came to get Crawl. Why didn't Zach? Why isn't Zach out there helping with the farm? And I guess he doesn't. Because he didn't wake him up. And say, hey, it's
Yeah,
time to get up. But so yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, that's why it would like Crawl's when he said he would help Crawl. The dad looked like, "What?
yeah,
You want to do this?"
mm-hmm.
Um, he teaches Crawl how to milk a cow correctly,
And
which is good. Also during this is when he's like saying they're talking about grabbing boobs
right.
as they're just milking the cow. And he's like, oh, have you touched my sisters? And Carl's like, don't talk about your sister like that.
What doesn't he call them cones?
Yes, they called
Yeah,
boobs cones.
cones.
Hmm.
Yeah. For a minute, it took me a minute to get that. It's like,
Yeah,
and then
there's
it
a
was
lot
like,
of like slang here.
yeah, there is like
um
poly slang.
yes, it's the weasel talk.
Weasel.
um
Oh, there you go. Weasel speak.
yes, weasel words. And he's like, don't talk about your sister like that.
Yeah, that's not nice. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, okay. So again, Crawl is a little goofy, light scumbag, but he's still like not a bad guy.
No, yeah, you can tell yeah, there's a line there, and he's telling Zach, you don't cross that line. You know,
Yeah.
you're not, you don't talk about your sister like that and stuff. So
Yeah. But Crawl, like, he fixes the fence. And he sort of like is figuring out how to like adapt the farm stuff. Like, for example, he has to fill this like whole line of troughs, and like the bag is too heavy for him to hold. So he straps it to his back and puts on his rollerblades and rolls down the row, and he like sort
I,
of
I
opens both ends.
I like that with the goggles, and yeah,
Yes.
it's like he's like downhill skiing or something. So
Yeah. So he's sort of like figuring out how to navigate these challenges his way. And then he sees this big machine, which I think is like a thresher.
it's either a thresher or a combine.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
big.
yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, what is this?" And he decides to climb on in.
I like how he goes mischief. Like
There's a John Denver tape in it, and he puts it in. So we're hearing "Thank God I'm a Country Boy," which um, is a song I love. It's if you go to Orioles games
I
and
was
you're
getting
there
ready,
at the seventh inning stretch,
bottom of the seventh.
you hear right after "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," it goes always immediately into "Thank God I'm a Country Boy," which is funny because it's in Baltimore, but uh, It's I did some
It's
research. I guess there was a time that John Denver came
yeah, and
and
played at
sang
this.
it, and
Hmm.
they like the rest of that season or something like kept playing it, and then when they stopped, people were angry, so then they just like
Yeah, it was
have
became a
have played
standard.
it ever. It became like part of it.
I
So
think it
like
was in
cuz
the early '80s. It's like
yeah,
yeah,
something like that. I
hmm
like read the story because
because
I
it
was like,
was at
why?
it
This
was at
doesn't
the
like
old Memorial Stadium.
yeah, it doesn't feel like it because I think like whoever owned the Orioles like knew him or something, and he came and performed, and so like they were doing it for a time, and then they were like, okay, well like that's enough, and then everybody was like, how dare you stop playing John
Right, yeah.
Denver?
Well, they
So
thought
now,
brought good luck, yeah, because
yeah,
they were on a
yeah,
roll. I think it was right the season before they won the World Series in
that
80,
would make sense, right? Because they won in '83, so
83. Yeah. So,
but yeah, so like if you're an O's fan, then
yeah,
Thank
you
God
know
I'm
the
a Country
song.
Boy
Hmm.
is so like two things I love, the Orioles and son-in-law,
Right.
united by Thank God I'm a Country Boy. Um, so he's driving around, he accidentally turns on the machine and it starts going. He doesn't realize it because it's like covered with like a sheet, so he can't really tell that he's moving until like he moves enough that the sheet gets like pulled off and he's like, oh.
Oh.
And then Walter and Theo realize that he's driving away. They're like, go after him. So they're like on foot chasing this machine as he's driving across the cornfield. And he's like, oh, I'm plowing some corn. Like he's trying to sing along with the song. I love Theo falls and he turns around and he's like, watch out, Theo.
Yeah, like he's gonna run over, and it's got these big pointy blades in
Yes.
in the front. So yeah.
It's funny too because when Walter and Theo are running, Theo's like, I can't jog. Falls over. But Crawl manages to like drive it back with no damage. So
What's he write in the cornfield though? I couldn't read.
he writes Crawl.
Crawl. Okay, I couldn't.
It says Crawl in cursive.
I should have stopped it and paused, but yeah, it's his name then. Okay, I get it.
Yes.
Because I knew it was a word, I just couldn't make it out. So okay, that
Yes.
was cute.
And then later that night, as everyone's getting ready to go to like the town line dance, square dance, Crawl's getting ready and he sees what he thinks is Rebecca in a towel. And he goes up behind her to give her a little squeeze, and it is not Rebecca. It is her
Hmm.
mother, Connie. And he's like, oh, sorry. Then he's like, wow, like, why don't you like ever wear makeup? Like, you're really pretty. And like, and she's basically like, for what? Like, for who? Because clearly, the
Right.
Connie Walter marriage, there's not a lot of passion there. So he's like, come on, like, why don't you give it a try? He's like, listen, let me like give you a
Work my
makeup,
magic.
work my magic, right? And if you don't like it, that's fine. But like, just give me 15 minutes. And then, although it definitely takes longer than 15 minutes because they have to drive
Evidently.
separately. And this is when he's go, oh, nasty. Girlfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend. And then finally she agrees. Um, Walter, the dad, and Rebecca do apologize to each other from their earlier argument, and they go ahead because Connie's like, Carl and I will meet you all later.
Hmm.
We'll drive in the other car, so you guys go ahead. And so Walter and Rebecca are boot scoot boogieing at the dance. And then Rebecca is like freezes. She's like, oh my God. It's
Oh,
like at the
yeah.
end of Grease. It's like the end of Grease when they see Sandy.
Right.
She's like hitting her dad, like, oh my God, look. Because Crawl and Connie have walked in. It is a perfect because there's the saloon doors. So you could just see her face. And then she comes through the saloon doors and you can see the full look. And she is like in like this like satiny, brightly colored pink dress, like handkerchief hem with like a little scarf around her head and like makeup and like her hair's done and it's like a whole look. She looks very different from everybody else
Oh, yeah.
at the square
Yeah.
dance. She is bright, but she does look lovely. She's also wearing like a bustier under it, so she's like snatched, as the kids would say. And she looks lovely. It doesn't necessarily to me scream this occasion, but that's okay. She also seems to be wearing like ballroom dancing shoes.
Yeah. But evidently she makes an impression.
Yes, because Walter's like he goes up to her and he like doesn't have anything. He like doesn't even know what to say. But then another guy comes up to be like, "Hey, do you want to dance?" And he's like, "Oh, you get the hell out of here. Go on, get."
Yeah. That was funny.
It's like he couldn't come up with what to say until someone else came up and then he's like, "Hey, you get the hell out of here." Um, it's very funny. But then they're dancing and clearly like really,
Mhm.
flirtatious. We have
Right.
reignited the passion. Rebecca's very happy. She's like, "Oh my God, Carl, look what you did. This is great. I've never seen my parents like this. This is awesome." And then Travis comes up to them and Crawl's like, "No, please don't hit me." But instead he apologizes and he's like, "Hey, while you're here, let me throw you a bachelor party." First of all, do we need to throw a bachelor party immediately after getting engaged? I don't think so. That doesn't
No,
feel like a normal
you do it
timeline.
right before the
Right,
wedding. Yeah. We
right,
don't even have a date set, so
right. Anyways, and he's like, "Oh wow, great." And then Tracy comes and she's talking to Travis. And guess what Travis has been doing while Rebecca is gone?
what?
Tracy. That's what he's been doing. Tracy. So you're like, wow, he acted all betrayed, but he's been cheating on her the whole time.
That rat
And
bastard.
actually, Rebecca has not been cheating on him because this is a lie. So, like,
Yeah. Yeah, Rebecca's because he even told Travis when they pretended to be engaged, he goes, "She didn't cheat on you, bro."
yeah. And back when they were in California and they were like looking at people on the beach, she was like looking at a guy and he's like, "Rebecca, what about Travis?"
Yeah,
So, like, uh, scumbag. Travis is a scumbag.
exactly.
Um, Also, there's a funny moment when the guy calling the square dance like steps away for a minute and Crawl goes up there and he's like, "If your gal is finger licking, everybody do the funky chicken." He has them like rubbing their butts together and he's going, "Buff the wood, buff the wood."
He has some original square dancing calls. Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah.
he's changing it up. And the guy comes back and he's like, "No, everybody loves it." And they do. Then
Yeah,
he's like
they're all
crowd
having fun.
surfing. The other guy tries to crowd surf and no one catches him, but he's still okay. He hops up.
He hops up. Yay.
Um, And then later that night, like they get home and Rebecca and Crawl, she's thanking him again, like for, sort of reigniting her parents. She's never seen them like that. And they do seem to be having like a really like a moment.
Mhm.
And then Pappy's like, just act like I'm not here. That's what everyone else does. And they're like, hi, Pappy. Once again, Crawl says, can I whittle wood with you? He says, can I please whittle wood with you? And finally, he says yes. And those are usually tells him to get like a piece of wood to whittle, and he gets a huge log.
Yeah.
And Pappy's just like, ugh.
He's like this kid.
Mom and Dad pushed the beds together.
Mm.
They were living I Love Lucy style, and now
Yes.
they're uh
And well, as Crawl put it, they're getting busy.
busy. And the next morning, Mom is little
Mm,
tousled, as you
yes.
might say. And
There's a
even Rebecca's
glow.
like, oh, did you get busy? And Mom and Dad are flirty again, so the spark is back. Walter and Pappy are gonna go fishing, and Carl's like, "Oh, can I go?" And they're like, "Oh no," but the mom is like, "Let him go, take him with you."
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, Zach, your gear's in the car, and Zach's like, I don't want to go. He just wants to play video games. He's into video
Yeah, he's
games.
doing his little whatever that Game
It looks
Boy
like a
or
Game Boy, like the first Game
yeah.
Boy. Um, they go fishing, so it's just Pappy, Walter, and Crawl. And Pappy and Walter, they're a little snippy, getting in some arguments. And Walter is talking to Crawl about it, and he's like, he just like, I just want to like kind of do my thing, right? Like, let me like do what I need to do. And Crawl's like, huh, sometimes it's kind of sounds like that's how you are with Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because Crawl, despite being a goof, is kind of he's a little wise. You know,
Yeah. And he's
he has some
observant.
insights. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He notices what's going on.
And Walter's like, well, how about you mind your own damn business? Like,
Yeah.
he's like, hey, shut up. Because obviously Crawl was correct. Because he's like, oh, you mean
He
playing those stupid video games? And it's like, yeah, like that's what he's into. Like,
yeah. And he
let him do his thing.
just needs some space like you
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
exactly. But then while they're having this conversation, Pappy like falls over and it looks like he's having a heart attack.
Yeah.
So they rush over. Walter goes to get his pills. I guess he has some like nitroglycerin or whatever, or aspirin or something in the
Oh,
car. So
mm-hmm.
he's going to get those pills and Crawl's like, okay, assess the situation. And he's going to give him mouth to mouth despite this man obviously breathing. The man
Right.
is breathing.
Yeah, it's not like he's turning blue or anything
Right.
or respiration has
Everyone.
ceased. Yeah.
You only do mouth to mouth if the person is not breathing or they're only having like shallow gasps for breath. Okay. Also, the most important part of CPR is the compressions, just so you know.
I was going to say, I know from my wife, who's a respiratory therapist. Yeah, they don't do the breaths anymore. It's just chest compressions.
Yeah. A lot of times now they teach people sometimes like the hands only, like the
Yeah,
compressions only.
that's what they do now.
That's
Yeah.
what saves someone's life, just so
Yep.
you know.
Hmm.
Anyways,
The pumping.
um, but the shock of Crawl leaning in to put his mouth on Pappy's mouth is enough to shock Pappy out of whatever episode he's having. It served as a defibrillator for him.
Exactly. He went out of atrial fib into regular
Yes.
fibrillation.
He was like, "Ah!" And
Yeah.
Walter's like, "What happened?" He's like, "He tried to kiss me."
Yeah.
He's like, "I was trying to give you mouth to mouth." He's like, "If it's between dying or kissing you, I'd rather die." Uh, but when they get back, Walter does tell Crawl, he's like, I am really happy. Thank you for what you did for my dad. Even though he didn't really do anything. He was
Uh,
trying to help. He was trying to
yeah,
help. So Walter is really grateful that it seems like Crawl is really growing on everybody.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, he's trying to. He didn't fail at the farming thing. He didn't. He didn't. He sucked it up, and then
mhm.
he's turned out to be kind of trying to fit in, even though he
Yeah.
is weird.
He's weird and he's different, but he's an asset to the family in
Yeah,
many
yeah,
ways.
more so than Travis.
Yeah. But when they get back, Crawl tells Rebecca they have to talk, and he's like, "We can't like keep lying to them. Like, I really like your family,
Yeah,
and like I care about them, and like I can't keep lying to them like this." Which again, I'm like, Crawl, good. He's a good person.
yeah. So
Um, so
he's
she's like, "No, we'll just like we don't need to say anything on this trip. We'll go back to school, and then when we're there, we'll call them and say we broke up." But he's like, I don't like that. I don't want to
yeah.
lie to them."
That's not the right thing to do.
But I guess he relents because they don't tell them. Um, and then it's time for Thanksgiving. And when you live in a place like this, you do not go to the grocery store to buy a turkey, which is what Carl thought they were going to do. He's like, we're not going to
Right.
get a butterball. No, what you do is Theo gives you a cleaver and you chase around a turkey in a pen. And he does not want to do it. Then the turkey's chasing him.
Yeah.
And he keeps like screaming and he
Turkeys are
screams.
mean.
Yeah. He screams and howls at it so much that he like shocks the turkey into death. It just
It
falls
falls
over.
over.
And
That
he's like,
is
"Oh my God,
funny.
it's like the horse in Animal House."
Yeah.
It just has a heart, it just like gets startled to death. So then they have it inside in like the pot. And the dad's like, "Okay, you killed the turkey, you gotta clean it." And he's like, "Why are you making me do this?" Which is what I would say too. I was like, I don't won't eat turkey then. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but so they're like, "Okay, you gotta start pulling out the tail feathers."
Right.
So he pulls out a handful of tail feathers, and lo and behold,
That
that turkey's not dead. It
it's
it
it's
arises
alive.
and starts flapping, and he goes, "It's a miracle!"
Yeah.
It's flying around the kitchen. Perfect timing. Travis pulls up to pick up Crawl for his bachelor party, and he's like, "Oh, gotta go." And so he
Yeah.
runs out while the family is dealing with this turkey flapping around the kitchen. I love that part. It's a
It was
miracle.
funny because I wondered if they had it looked like a real turkey. I guess it
Hmm.
was. So,
Yeah.
that they had flapping around inside this inside this room.
Right. It's so funny. Like, even if you ever get like a small bird inside,
Oh gosh, yeah. Uh-huh.
it's comical. One time, after my grandmother died, we were cleaning out her house and a bird got inside. And we were trying to get it to leave. But also, birds are stupid. So they don't like,
Right. They don't go to the
you're like,
nearest
"Look, there's like a
there's
whole opening. There's an open door right there. Go out." And they're just like, "Blah, blah, blah." Also, this bird was funny because my grandmother had this like lovely wreath that had all this like fake fruit on it, and it landed on the wreath in such a way that it looked like it was part of the wreath. And I thought it was really funny, but my uncle did not think it was funny. He was like determined to get the bird out, and I was enjoying it a little bit because it was funny.
oh, okay.
But eventually I got the bird out. I
Oh,
had to like lock myself in this little mudroom with the bird.
and then open a window
And then
or
I opened like the door to the outside.
oh,
It was like a
okay.
little like sort of mudroom laundry room thing.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
gotcha.
shut us in there and then opened the door to the outside. So it was like a smaller room. It had less room to like fly around and get confused.
So it was like an airlock.
Yeah, basically. Yes.
Yeah. You were like alien. You
Yeah.
just
Yes.
it
They
is
were like, "You didn't have to go with the bird." I was like, "Well, like we needed to make sure that it got out." So,
right,
but
exactly.
anyways, it reminded me of that, but imagine a turkey-sized bird. So, Krull goes to the bar for his bachelor party. He's chugging beers, which everyone thinks is entertaining. That's a skill that he shares with these people because he's
Right.
been in college for 6 years.
Oh yeah,
And
he can
then,
chug.
yeah, then we see Theo dump a bunch of pills into a beer.
Yes.
He's roofing him. And Krull, they encourage Krull. They're like, "No, you have to chug this one too. You have to chug this one too." So he
Mm-hmm.
does, and then he's like, "I want to sing," and he gets up on stage and starts singing "Thank God I'm a Country Boy." But then Tracy comes in. She
And
unplugs the machine, and she's the stripper.
yeah, which I thought was like because before Travis was like, I need a favor from you, and it's like, oh, I want you to strip and dance like a grind in front of all my friends, and and it's like
Yeah,
she goes, yeah, I'll do that.
yeah. I don't know. They didn't seem to have a healthy relationship, and maybe he offered her a good amount of money
Maybe I don't
because she's trying
know,
to save.
or
But
it's a shame.
yeah, yeah. Also, he's like continuing to sleep with her during this trip, to be clear.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like
So he's not that busted up about Rebecca.
no.
Because that night, the other night when at the square dance, she was like, "Are you still coming over?" And he was like, "You know I am."
Oh yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
anyway, she does her little strip tease. As soon as she gets to Crawl, he passes out, just fully collapses.
Right.
And
He's
then
done.
the guys are like, "Oh, well, now you have to chug a beer," which they have also drugged.
Yes.
And then,
Unbeknownst to her.
yes, it is now Thanksgiving, the next day. Cock-a-doodle doo. And the Warner family, they're all prepping food in the kitchen, getting the turkey ready and making an apple pie, all this stuff. And they're
Yummo.
like, "Where's Crawl?" His little brother's like, "He didn't come home last night." And conveniently, Theo is like, "Oh, well, I heard some ruckus at the barn last night, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe check there." And Rebecca's
And
like, oh, poor Crawl. Like, he must have just been having a hell of a time. So she goes out there, and who does she find in the barn but Crawl and Tracy, both half dressed,
in
covered
a
up in a blanket in the hay.
Trump compromising position.
Yes. It does not look good. She wakes them up. She's obviously very upset. Crawl does not remember anything. He passed out at the bar and then he woke up there. And same for Tracy. She's like,
Tracy, she doesn't
I was
remember
at the
anything.
bar
Yep.
and then I woke up here. Um, Rebecca doesn't believe Crawl. They argue. She's like, you always tell me to be honest and you're not being honest. And he's like, I'm telling you everything I remember. And then he turns it back on her and he's like, you only brought me here. You said you brought me here because I was going to be alone, but you only brought me here because you knew Travis was going to propose to you and you needed
Mm.
like a shield from Travis. And she's like, nah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So he's about to leave. He's packing. Tracy is gets in her car, which is there, and she's leaving. And Travis rolls up and she's like, I don't remember anything. And he's like, you and Crawl were all over each other when you left the bar last night. It was so gross. What about what we had together?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is like, ugh. Gross hypocrite, I wrote in my notes.
Oh, there you go. I just put Travis as a dick.
Well, that's another way of saying it.
Sorry, I was a
Um,
little blunt.
but yeah, he's
So,
acting all offended. He's like, "Oh my God, I
oh,
can't believe you did that."
I know. Yeah, like you cheated on your girlfriend with me. I mean,
Right.
with Tracy. Yeah. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the pot calling the
You
kettle
were gonna
black.
propose to this woman while you were sleeping with me.
I
Oh,
know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
you
you were
did
all.
propose to her. She just said no.
Yeah.
Um, and so Crawl is leaving. Everybody is sad. Crawl's leaving. He's sad. Zach is sad that he's leaving because obviously they bonded. Rebecca's
Yeah.
sad. Tracy's driving, crying. She's sad.
Oh yeah, she's full blown upset.
But then she finds a bottle of pills under her seat. And she's like, these are not mine. I didn't put these here. So then she turns around. U
Does
turn.
she does the Starsky and Hutch,
Yes.
yeah.
um, and she pulls up besides Crawl, who is hitchhiking. He has a
Yeah.
sign that says like Hollywood, please.
Hollywood, yeah, that was funny.
Just like I don't know if anybody in this town's going to Hollywood, but okay. So she's like, get in the car, and he's like, I think we have spent enough time together. Thank you very much. And she's like, get in the car. So he gets in. Cut back to the Warners. Travis and Theo are dining with them for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Travis tries again to propose. Uh, like, dude, get a message. But Tracy and Crawl arrive just
Right.
in time. And they're like, what are you doing here? Travis is like, how dare you show your face here? He's really like laying it on thick.
Oh God. It's
He is performing. And they're like, okay, so neither of us remember how we got to this barn. Tracy's like, I got in my car and the seat was pulled way back. I couldn't even reach the pedals. And Carl's like, huh, must have been somebody pretty big, huh? At Theo.
right, he's looking
And
right
he
at
does the little
Theo.
his little spit thing.
Yeah.
Ding! Like he's doing a spittoon. And then she says she found the pills and then they ask Theo directly. Walter's like, Theo, were
Right.
you involved in this? And he's like, he plays it off. He's like, how are you gonna believe them? Da, da, da. And he's like, Theo, I am asking you a question. Like,
Yeah.
and
And
he's like, oh, it was just a joke. It was just supposed to be fun. And they're like, well, you're fired. Get
yeah.
out. And then Travis is like, Rebecca, I can't believe you're gonna like believe this guy. And Rebecca's like, I can't believe you. Da, da, da. Travis is like, don't talk to me like that. You can't talk to me like that. And Carl's like, but I can. And he beats him up. He like elbows him in the gut and punches him in the face and knees him in the nuts. And then he falls down. It's a very like over the top comic, like his face when he knees him in the nuts, he's like,
Oh, he's
oh, fully like cross-eyed.
yeah, he does, yeah, like the double take, and then I like Crawl goes karate majored 2 semesters, it's
Yeah.
like
He is majored in everything. He said he majored in CPR for half a semester. I
half a
was like,
semester. It's right.
you
So
can't major in CPR?
maybe at University of Los Angeles you can.
Maybe. It
Maybe that's
seems a pretty freewheeling place.
exactly that could be a major there. So
Could be. Um, oh, also actually before Crawl beats him up, Pappy
oh yeah,
is like, I can't even remember the exact line. I wish I did, but he's basically like, this dweeb is gonna let a righteous dude like Crawl like talk to him like that. No, man. Like he talks to him in Crawl language.
it's really funny. Mason Adams doing this. So
Yes. Yes. Actually, let me see if I can find the line because that would be
it,
to read it verbatim would be ideal because it is
yes,
very funny.
and you do deliver it well. So I was going to say because that's the other part is Mason Adams doing the weasel
Yes.
talk.
Mason Adams doing Pauly Shore.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you in my generation, we remember Mason Adams doing the Smucker's jelly commercials. So
Oh, I found it.
okay,
He goes, Travis, it really tweaks my melon to see a buff bro like Crawl here get wheezed on by a greasy scumbag like you. So you just chill. I think that's how he did because he like draws
he
out some of
draws
these
out the
lines.
chill. Yeah, no, they're
Greasy
very good. Yeah,
scumbag like you. Um, then Carl beats him up. And they fire Theo and they're like, take him with you. And he's like, well, I don't work for you anymore, so I'm not
yeah,
gonna do that. But then, Carl sits down to dinner and they also invite Tracy, because
yes,
Tracy was a scorned party in this as well. And Rebecca is going finally to fess up that the engagement is fake. And she's like, guys, I have something to tell you about our engagement. And then Carl steps in and he's like, right, we just decided, or she's like, I have something to tell you about us, and he's like, the wedding date, we're not gonna like rush on that. We just want to like take our time and see how things develop. Or he says we're gonna put things on hold and just see how things
yeah.
develop. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Like, no rush, take your time.
I know everybody's kind of relieved. I think, don't you? At that point, it's
Yeah,
like,
because also
oh,
like this is her first semester of college.
right,
She's
exactly. So
18. She does say at the beginning when like Travis is first trying to propose, she's like, I am too young to get married.
yeah, yeah,
So, but clearly this is showing like she and Kroll like do actually have something now.
yeah, and maybe they'll
Um,
see where it develops or where it goes,
and they'll see
or
where it goes. But they're gonna give like a relationship a try. Even though he's like 25, I guess.
I mean, so I was good so yeah, so if you think about it, if he's been in college for 6 years, so he's like at least
He's gotta
24,
be like
25,
24, yeah.
24, 25, and she's 18. So he's okay. So I can't really say much because I'm that and a year older than Denise, but I didn't
But
marry
you
her
didn't
when I
meet
was,
Denise when she was, yeah,
when she was
18.
18 years old. That's true.
But
So
I will say it does seem like in their dynamic, Krull has been like reasonable,
yeah. Oh yeah.
wise.
He
So
he hasn't,
hopefully,
and he's not been like he's been weird, but he hasn't been like creepy weird, like
yeah.
where he's trying to, like, get her. Although he did say at one point, remember when they were talking about, he goes, well, you are engaged, and stuff. And he goes, oh,
Hmm.
I guess we are. And he goes, does that mean I get some time?
Yes.
And she was like, ew, it's
Oh
like,
yeah, and that when they were outside and the grandfather broke things up the next
yeah,
morning, he did tell her that she left him with a semi
yeah, yeah, exactly.
in front of her mom.
Re-
But I guess the mom was like at that point, she's like,
well,
ah, ha, ha, ha,
he said
ha.
that to her mom. He said, "You're giving me a semi."
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
true.
when he saw her in the towel. So it's like,
Yeah, they just all boundaries abandoned, I guess.
yeah. So,
Um,
but yeah. So Crawl's not the he's weird, but I never thought of him as like, like Travis, like being a cheating bastard or
yeah,
just in it for
exactly.
one thing. He's
Not
not
a
a
bad guy.
yeah, not a bad guy. So just odd.
Then
So
it's time to eat Thanksgiving dinner, and the dad says, "Let's munch on some grindage."
grindage.
And then I love the last little bit. The rooster crows again the next day, and Carl is like, "We get the point," and like throws a rock at it.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends with just like a nice like family portrait and crazy little thing called love.
Yeah,
Another
it,
iconic song.
well, the music was good, the
Hmm.
soundtrack all through the thing, and when I realized though, other than like the scene in the well, the country club, the restaurant or whatever,
Hmm.
in the square dance, there was like maybe 12 people, in the cast of main characters.
Hmm.
It was a small cast
Yeah.
and kind of a small movie, when you
Yeah.
think about it. So,
I wish
but
they made more
evidently it
movies
did.
like this. I feel like they don't make movies like this sort of mid-budget movie.
I
I feel like
know.
it's like a really small indie movie or it's like a
A
Marvel
quarter of a
movie.
billion dollars.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
it's like a huge movie or it's like a movie that plays in like three theaters in the country and there's
right.
like no
Yeah,
in between. And it's like
yeah.
I feel like the 90s and even like the 80s like there were a lot more movies like this
Well, I
and I wish
think,
that there were more.
yeah. I mean, even this, I saw it cost like $8 million to make this movie.
Right? Because it's
Where in
like
the
you
hell
said it's
did
like 12 people.
and I'm thinking, even at that, like, where in the hell did you spend $8 million making this movie? It's like, maybe I could have made this movie for $1 million, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Mason Adams is a greedy bastard. I don't know.
That's true. I did yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but the production value was good. I thought, there
Hmm.
was,
Hmm.
and except maybe, and like I said, I don't think they had to pay for any clothing because I think that's all Polly's
It
real
could
clothes.
be.
So
Could be. But yeah, I just think this movie is like fun. I love just like a goof with a heart of gold kind of thing, right? Like I think a lot of these movies that I've picked from the 90s, right? It's like Cher from Clueless and like Romeo and Michelle, they're all sort of like goofy people.
yeah, well, like Dumb
And
and
they are
Dumber.
all these like Valley Girl type, like they're all these like California, like, oh my God, like
Mm,
that same, they're like the girl version of Crawl. But they're all like nice people and like caring at the heart, even though they're like goofy.
yeah, I mean, yeah, they care about people. They have feelings and stuff, and they're not shallow
Yeah.
what's oh shoot, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, or materialistic,
Yeah.
for the most part. It's yeah, they care about people's feelings or how they are, and not how much money they have or what kind of car they drive.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, so I think we touched on a lot of the cast. I was just going to go through the rest of them. So we talked about Pauly Shore. Obviously, like I said, I think he is like this movie, Encino Man, Biodome, in the Army now. He plays the friend. He voices the friend in Goofy movie. That's another for the 90s kids here.
Oh, okay.
You'll recognize his voice. Carla Gugino, we talked about already. The dad, Walter, is played by Lane Smith, who for me he's the prosecutor in My Cousin Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also on Lois and Clark. He was in Red Dawn. He was in The Mighty Ducks. The mom, Connie, is played by Cindy Pickett. For me, again, she's Ferris Bueller's mom in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but she was
Oh, I
also
forgot about that.
she was on Guiding Light. She was on Saint Elsewhere. The Pappy, Walter Sr., the grandfather, as Jim said, he's played by Mason Adams. So he was like very big on radio programs and TV commercials from like the 40s all the way through like the 70s. And he was Lou Grant. Is that?
Mm-hmm. He played his boss, I
Yeah,
think.
he was on Lou Grant.
Yeah, that's where I remember him.
Yes, managing editor Charlie Hume.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a really prolific actor, like I said, from the 40s all the way, like this is in the 90s. So he was
Mm.
doing a lot. The little brother, Zach, is played by Patrick Renna, who, again, I think he's very recognizable to people of my generation. He is in The Sandlot. If you know the iconic line, "You're killing me,
So,
Smalls." He says it.
yep, it's
And he was in
him.
like The Big Green and like lots of other kind of 90s kid movies. Theo is played by Dennis Berkeley. He was a voice on King of the Hill. He played, I think, the principal on King of the Hill. That was, I
Oh,
think, his
okay.
probably biggest thing. Travis, the boyfriend, is played by Dan Gauthier. He was the love interest in another movie that we'll watch eventually called Teen Witch. Um,
Oh, okay.
he's like the boyfriend. He was also on One Life to Live. He was on the show Ellen, when Ellen had her sitcom.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
as we talked about, Tracy is played by Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who is Kelly Kapowski, always and forever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's like a small cast, but like a lot of good people that you recognize from other things. And I think they play it's like a classic like fish out of water thing, right? That's not like a new construction, but I think it just is so silly
Oh, yeah, it is. But
that
it's a sweet, goofy, silly.
yes, agreed.
I mean,
Yes.
in my opinion, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
don't mean to,
No, I agree. I think that's why I have affection for it because there
sure.
is um the sweetness at with the silliness. Which is like similar, I think. I mean, it's a very different movie than Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but there is just like street goofs in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's very
There,
silly, but at the heart of it,
it's
it is sweet.
yeah, John Candy's character, yeah,
Yes.
it is. He's not, he's offbeat in
Mm-hmm.
the same, not in the same way, but in that manner, where
Mm-hmm.
he's different from other people, but yeah,
Yeah.
but deep down he's insightful. Like he said, he liked himself, and then I think
Yeah.
Polly Crawl, he's like that. He observes, he tries to help people. He tried to help her,
Mm-hmm.
the mom, and he was helping Rebecca.
He
He
tried to save the grandfather's life.
tried to save the grandfather's life. He helped Zach, with his
Mm-hmm.
computer, and he was trying to help with that relationship. Yeah, so he's not there to be a disruption. He's there to try to be a steadying influence, maybe a little bit. So
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a similar dynamic, right? Of like they all find him annoying the same way that Steve Martin found John Candy annoying. And then eventually they're like, "Oh, you know what? This is like
yeah,
kind of a nice guy." And
yeah,
you could see Carl like they don't get that into it, but like he's kind of a lonely guy too, right? Like
well,
his
yeah,
mom is often in Las Vegas. He was
right.
supposed to visit her, that fell through. He's going to be alone. Like,
And he's just trying to make the best of his situation, it seems
mhm,
like, rather than like being all down in the dumps and despondent, like, he
go
was
with the flow, like
go
John
with
Candy said. Go with
yeah,
the flow.
he found his hungry man turkey dinner or whatever he
Yeah.
was going to have for Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
I thought it was a sweet,
Mm.
and like I think I said before we started recording, I think Pauly Shore is maybe an acquired taste, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I could take him in large doses, but in this movie he was,
This is a nice 90-minute
yeah,
dose.
exactly, a sampling, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
of the wonder that is Pauly. So
Yes.
so
Yes.
good pick, good Thanksgiving pick too. I like
Thank you.
that.
I was so happy that I was like, wait,
Yeah,
this is the
so
Thanksgiving movie. So we
it,
have to watch it.
and I think it sort of maybe strikes that both of us picked movies that had heart at the center
Mm-hmm.
of the movies, and had friendship, and that sort of thing, at a time of the season when we're supposed to be embracing our family and friends, so,
Exactly.
and be
Yeah.
thankful for what we have.
Yes. For sure. For sure.
S-
For sure.
for sure. So, and also now I know what munching on some grindage means.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, whenever we have a meal together, that's what we're going to start it.
That's what I'm going to
Let's
say. Yeah,
munch on some grindage.
grindage.
What do I?
So,
I'll say that at my Thanksgiving meal and see if no one will. They'll be like,
okay.
"What?" Everyone will be like, "Huh?
Excuse me.
What?" But
So good pick, good movie, and a fun movie.
thank
So,
you. I'm an evangelist for this movie, so if you have not seen it,
hmm
it's on Hulu. If I know you, I'll lend you my DVD.
it's also on Disney.
Oh, it is? Oh, that makes sense because Hulu and Disney
Yeah,
like now
it's I
overlap.
saw where it was on Disney as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So if
so
you have
if you had
Hulu, Disney Plus, it's
yeah,
on there. You can
it's
watch it.
available, or you
So
can rent it if you need to. So so I
yeah.
did, and I did try to check it out at my local library, and they said they don't carry it any longer because it hadn't gotten a lot of use. So I guess they recycle those. So
I need to obviously spread the word a little bit better.
we
I've
need
been
to.
slacking.
Well, then maybe
Maybe
we'll.
this will renew
I
interest.
was going to say maybe this will renew interest in a new generation of if not for Pauly Shore, then for son-in-law.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Pauly Shore, and you know what? Pauly Shore may be making a comeback because he's trying to
mm,
make this Richard Simmons biopic, which Richard Simmons I don't think wanted him to do.
no, but
Um, but now Richard Simmons is gone. But I will say, if you have seen Pauly Shore, he can really pull off the look, and I
and
think that he can.
he has he there is video of him dressed
Yes,
like Richard Simmons, and he is a spitting image of him.
yes, he's a dead ringer, and
Oh, good
I think
point.
I can. Oh, well, sorry. He pulls off the look. But and I think that I can see him, with this energy, even just like the crawl energy, like
Oh
clearly he
yeah.
can do.
hmm the craziness,
Yes, he
that
could
was
bring
Richard
the
Simmons.
Richard Simmons
Yeah.
energy. That would be interesting. It would also be interesting to see something that like covers all of Richard Simmons' life because it he wrote a memoir and not great. Like he had like heavy eating
Yeah.
disorders
Yeah.
because he grew up like
Oh
getting made
yeah.
fun of for being fat and like
Oh, and
hated himself
that's
basically.
what led him to, yeah, to, I guess, to pursue that path of fitness
Hmm.
and exercise and so on. So,
Also, there was a period of time that he lived in Italy and he was like an actor.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I listened
interesting.
to I'll recommend so one of my favorite podcasts recommending another is called Maintenance Phase. It's about like diet and like fitness and nutrition culture and they kind of debunk a lot of stuff, but
Hmm.
obviously because Richard Simmons was like big in the like fitness world, they had did a couple episodes about him
Oh, okay.
just
That's
talking about like
interesting.
his life and his legacy and like it's very interesting because
Oh,
yeah, he
okay.
like had a few he had like he was in commercials in Italy basically.
That's kind of neat though when you think
And
about
I
it.
think he's like in the background of a Fellini film. He has a
Ooh.
small cameo in a Fellini film.
Well, there's, that not a lot of people can say that. So,
Exactly, exactly. Richard Simmons.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting. Obviously, like it's complicated to like do movies and people are like, do not do a movie about me. But I also think sometimes the movie is better when the people are not involved.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe a
so
little bit more artistic license can be taken, or at
yeah.
least
Or it
that
can be a
there's
little bit more honest.
honest. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So
So,
we'll see, I guess. But who knows? Maybe Pauly Shore will be making a return.
well, could be, and maybe it'll lead to a new turn in his career, and maybe in a dramatic way. Look at Brendan Fraser, who was, in a spot in this movie and
Hmm.
suffered I was, a drought, so to speak, and then made a
Yeah.
big comeback with The Whale. So,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
won an Academy Award. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. We
yeah.
could see a Pauly Shore songs.
Who knows?
I'm gonna try to make it happen with everyone's names.
There you go. So,
I
okay,
mean, Lindsay Lohan's coming back, so
there
Pauly
you
Shore can.
go.
She was on. Can I just say she was on Watch What Happens Live, which is like Bravo's late night show with
Uh,
Lacey Chabert. They had a little
really?
little Mean Girls reunion.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, everybody watch Son-in-Law. It'll make you laugh at the very least, and you're gonna be walking around talking about munching on some grindage.
You will walk away with some catchphrases. I'll give you that, and
Yeah.
especially in the delivery too, not just the words. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. You got to talk like you have to do. You can't just say munching on some grindage. You got to munching on some grindage. You know,
Through the do.
grew the Jew guzzled some brew.
Ooh, there you go. So, all righty
Well,
then. So, any parting thoughts then, other than what you've given us as far as for Thanksgiving, I guess, coming up on us very soon. So,
well, I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. we've given you a couple movies you can watch with your family,
Mm-hmm.
have some laughs. That's always fun around Thanksgiving. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty to watch on Thanksgiving, but maybe in between parades and the football games and stuff, you want to check something out. Or maybe
Yeah.
maybe Wednesday night,
There
you
you
want
go. I
something to
was good.
watch together. Or Friday as you're recovering
Or maybe
before
even
you
over the
get
weekend. So,
yeah, before you get like full Christmas mode, you can enjoy a little Thanksgiving media and we'll be coming back next week starting it's going to be December.
I
So,
know. So holiday season is well
yes.
upon us. So ho
Yeah,
ho ho.
so we'll have some holiday season movies over the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. Well, with that, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you can make sure to get all of our episodes delivered straight to you every Monday when we release them. You can also rate, review, leave a comment, especially if it's nice. If not, we're going to be like, why'd you do that? You can also follow us on Instagram at Some of Our Parts Pod. You can see all the movies that we've talked about. There's a lot of different ones. You can also get little previews about what's coming and whatever else we see fit to share there. And with that, bye bye
Stay safe.
and munch on some grindage.